What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and I'm back playing some more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. Today's battle is going to be on the Dragon Isles. I'm going to be playing as the Lizardmen. My ally is going to be playing as the Last Defenders, Kroq'Gar, and we are up against the Dwarves and the High Elves, the least lore-likely alliance you can possibly imagine. But with their respective builds, they're going to be very difficult for us to take down. Now, I want to start by saying, right off the bat, my ally is actually the AI. So not very often I get to do this or want to do this, and I do not recommend it. Um, really, I set up a lobby, having some trouble getting a fourth person. No big deal. I'm not going to make my opponents wait. Queued up the AI so we could have a fun all Lizardmen army. And without, too much introduction here, because a lot of this is just going to be some Dino Rampage, we're going to get right to it. This map has tons of forests, tons of line of sight blockers. Artillery, not the best. The Goblobber up here is going to have a good time. It's got a nice high ground position, and because of its arcing fire, it basically, never is obstructed. So, check this out. The way they deployed together was pretty perfect around this hill. They've got nice lines of sight for their Thunderers. The High Elf player, surprisingly, has put all of their Lothern Sea Guard. They have shields. Yes, they're all shielded and chevroned up. He's got them in the center, behind these Longbeards with great weapons. Longbeards with great weapons are good choices. They trade very effectively with Saurus warriors, and they have charge defense against large. So you can't just run dinos up them and expect to bowl them over. They'll stand and fight. And he took so many of them that he's acting really as the front line for their entire armies. He's got just a standard dwarf lord to kind of afford all of these expensive and fun units. Unit of Iron Drakes, very good at roasting skinks and just getting through large amounts of chaff units. Thunder is great for their armor piercing, of course. We have the Phoenix Guard, Keepers of the Flame. So just lots of anti-large armor piercing is going to be the name of the game. And then the Dragonback Slayers with their slowing attacks, and the Giant Slayers with their heavy anti-large armor piercing bonuses protecting the back line. So I also see here we have a Runesmith for one of the hero units, and we have a Lore Master of Hoeth with a ton of spells on him. Spirit Leech, I see Earthblood, Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, I see Shim's Burning Gaze. So it looks like every single ability here taken on the Lore Master. Probably could have cut a few of those and saved a ton of money. But, maybe they just wanted the versatility. And then I also see here Tyrion, Mr. BA himself, with all of his abilities as well. The main one probably being Feint and Riposte. It's on a pretty low cooldown considering how long it lasts, and it gives him enormous buffs. And then Sunfang as well. We may get to see some good Sunfangs this battle, and I don't think we're even going to touch him enough to get his Heart of Avalor to proc. But if he goes below 20% HP, he has a great chance to go ahead and regen for a ton of HP. And then hidden in the forest here are the Fireborn, probably the most deadly unit on the battlefield for our opponents, because they are, in addition to being standard juiced up Dragon Princes, they're also an anti-large variant. So they're going to be good against every dinosaur unit, every Lizardman unit you can imagine. And then the Mage with the Lore of Life, a nice choice. Once again, every single spell taken. I have to imagine that perhaps wasn't intentional. But with all of that healing is awesome on the Dwarves, because the Dwarves don't have any natural healing whatsoever. So anytime you can heal a very tanky leadership heavy faction like the Dwarves, you're going to get a lot of value from them. So just a really nice combo. Despite them not being friendly in the lore, they're certainly going to be a great pairing here for this battle. And what I tried to do was compensate for my artificial intelligence having opponent. So I knew that they would just charge right up the pipe. There would be no strategy whatsoever. They would send all of their skink cohorts and temple guards and Saurus warriors. They would all just go right up the middle. Skink skirmishers would probably just stand right behind the front line and start shooting. Kroq'Gar would probably go right up the middle. So would the ancient Stegodon, the Pteranodons. I had to expect that. There's also some Kroq'Gars and a feral Bastillodon here, so that's going to maybe provide some punch to this flank. So I tried to add the strategy element to this army and let my ally just go right up the middle and take the brunt of this fire. So not being able to see the Fireborn here, nice trap really from the High Elf player. He's going to cast a Dwellers Below to damage and slow down my Feral Cold Ones. But this has a consequence that I didn't foresee right as it happened. I was like, well, I see that caster. We're going to see if my Saurus Scar veteran can get on that Lore of Life mage and take it out. And if that's the case, if that's something we can do, then we're going to get a nice little advantage here early in the game, take him off of some Winds of Magic. But then the heroes of the High Elves emerge from the forest, and he starts to move his caster away. And I realized, you know what, this isn't really the best fight. You know, a Kroq'Gar veteran could do a ton of damage to the Fireborn and vice versa, but how many Feral Cold Ones are going to die in the process? However, this is what triggered everything for me. The Feral Cold Ones were routing, and I didn't really have the micro at this point to stop them from rampaging. So they're going to rampage into the Fireborn, and there's really not much I can do about it. Because I'm trying to micro this entire army, I'm moving up my front line. My front line is primarily a nice mix of skink cohorts. They're very cheap. And I've got Saurus warriors with shields kind of intermixed for the heavy-hitting weapon damage. They have 52 weapon strength. That's a nice amount. And then on the flanks, I have Saurus spears. Didn't know what to expect. Could have been a pretty heavy cavalry build from the High Elves. You never know. So I took just some Saurus spears just in case. Out on the flanks here, on top of this high ground, I decided to park my regular Stegodon. And I have a skink chief on the back of a Stegodon as well. And they're going to be using these giant ballistas. If you've never seen them before, they're pretty cool. But I'm focusing down right now, or I will be very shortly, the Phoenix Guard and the Keepers of the Flame, these regiments of renown that explode on death. They're probably the most expensive and scariest infantry unit on the battlefield, and I want to get them gone. Everything else I have is not going to be very good at taking them down. As a bit of a secondary line, or just to give me a little extra punch in the front line, I have the Kroq'Gars. You gotta love these guys, giant crocodiles. I know everyone was hoping to see Nakai. Let's go ahead and put it in standard speed. Check them out. Some of the cavalry from my ally trying to do a little flanking, the Cold One Riders. It's the regular ones, they're not anti-large. They just have that armor piercing. I have a Bastillodon with the Revivification Crystal. Boom, I said it right. And that's going to be giving me some much needed healing in this frontline engagement, because it's going to be extremely difficult for us to break through all of these Longbeards with great weapons. Now, there was something wrong here. My skink cohorts with javelins, I had asked them to target, and I think what had happened was the units in front of them disappeared into the forest and then reappeared as we gained better vision. So they ended up running into melee, and that was a huge mistake. I didn't catch it until the very beginning, until they started to die. So I saw them starting to die, and I realized that something terrible had happened, and I figured it was a line of sight thing. They lost vision and then just ran into melee. So I get a nice banishment here for my Slan Priest. I went with the high variant. He has lots of very good bound abilities, the banishment being one of them. Another one he has that he can take, the Blood Statuette of Spite. It's kind of a mini Fate of Buna effect. And I'm going to use it on every high tier infantry unit that I can get my hands on. I moved my Pterodon Riders. One of them has the Fireleaf Bolas, the other does not. And I'm just trying to shoot at anything I can, anything that's not shielded. But I'm always just a little bit disappointed by the DPS on those things. They just don't ever seem to do enough. And at this point, yep, you can see we're shooting at the Keepers of the Flame. We've done a good bit of damage to them, down to 73 models. And the Goblobber's just up here tearing into my front line. And we're just way too blobbed up, honestly. Kroq'Gar, because he's controlled by the AI, he's going to run straight in and just get surrounded. We've got the Pure Main Company getting buffed, or Wizard's Wild Form, very cool. And the Phoenix Guard, you see the screen shakes as Kroq'Gar tries to disengage. He's broken. Yeah, and I pretty much lost all of my, as they are often called, my clever girls. They rampage into the Fireborn and got absolutely crushed. But I'm trying to find a way to make my Saurus Scarvet effective. And I used him just to kind of hopefully try to push through this front line. But Longbeards are just so resilient. They're able just to sit back and fire all they want with these Lothern Sea Guards, and there's really nothing we can do about it. With a little bit of rune magic from the Runesmith, taking down these Temple Guards with a Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and the Iron Drakes getting some good fire here into these very blobbed up Saurus. Nice strategy. And just a perfect, textbook position here. Thunderers up on the hilltop firing into my Revivification Crystal. I was very hesitant to throw him into the front line because there's really nothing for him to fight other than perhaps Longbeards. But once these Phoenix Guards started to come in, I tried to retreat him, but it was too late. I had taken way too much Thunderer fire. But he's going to rally, and I'm going to be able to get a lot of value from him this game. Going to get a lot of healing done. He cannot heal himself, though. That is something you need to be aware of. And I'm using that Statuette of Spite on any high-tier unit that I can. I know I used it at one point on the Pure Main Company. They are unbreakable, so they're a pretty good choice. And I managed to pull back. You see here, I pulled back my skink hordes with javelins so that they can throw their javelins, one, and two, so that they don't just join in this giant mashing and get killed alongside every other unit. The Ancient Stegodon here, you know, despite being surrounded by Phoenix Guard, he'll still give it back. He's a powerful, powerful, monstrous unit. Would love to see him go toe-to-toe with the Sword Master. That would have been pretty cool. And I get another banishment on this blob. I send in my Sword of Scarvet to try and get all of these units standing on top of him. And it was a pretty decent banishment. I think it did a lot of damage, but the dwarves themselves are magic resistant as a people. So they're pretty difficult to break off with just lots of magic like that. And now I'm having to rally my forces. You see I've got skinks running off the battlefield, but I need to bring them back. What do I have here? Some Feral Cold Ones, just 7 of them. I actually saw them return, and I just left them there because I felt like they actually can't do anything right now in battle, but they may be affecting our balance of power, so I didn't want to take them out. And I think the trees were actually obstructing some of my vision here. I should have pulled these pterodons up. Wow, look how many shots didn't go through. And I was wondering, while the battle was taking place, why these units weren't being more effective. And I think, honestly, it was just because they were hitting the trees on half of their attacks. But you see some of them connect, and the Longbeards kind of go flying. But there really were no good targets for them. And in a moment, I'm going to turn and get them to dive into melee on the Thunderers. And it's about right now, I do believe. There we go. Right as they begin to shoot, we kind of had the same idea. I think the Dwarf player looked at my Pterodons, and he was like, man, that's a juicy target. And I looked at the Thunderers, and I'm like, wow, we need to shut those down. So we kind of had the same idea at the same time. Throughout this game, I don't know if you guys have seen it in the background perhaps, but I was able to get some shields of the old one in this blob right here, and I think in this blob that we had over here, to try and give that ward save to our front line and protect them, but ultimately they just had so much good AoE damage, they had so much missile damage that they were protecting, and then the Goblobber, 177 kills. That's just enormous. And the Pterodons, you know, they can disrupt Thunderers pretty well. But with buffs like Stand Your Ground going off and with their heavy armor, 80 armor, the Pterodons aren't going to be able to take this fight versus a Lord and Runesmith. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So obviously, we're not doing too hot right now. The Lothar and Seaguard, all of the range elements have pretty much used all of their ammunition, which tells you how effective they were. I still have my Skink Chief on his Ancient Stegodon. I still have my other Ancient Stegodon in good shape. My Slime Priest has been casting, you know, healing all game. And at this point, I realize that he's very much in danger. So I'm going to pull him back. I'm going to try to rally my forces. But sadly, there's no coordinating with the AI. And the AI is just going to send in everything right as it returns and blob it up as many times as they can. I've been keeping my Kroq'Gar in this fight here in the forest as much as I can. They've been getting a pretty big portion of my healing. And they're not doing bad, but they don't really have anything great to fight. I mean, they don't want to fight Keepers of the Flame. These units, these Phoenix Guards, are basically unbreakable. So our opponents, I mean, kudos to them. They took an army designed to kill the Lizardmen, and they did a great job. And I just took a fun army with a lot of different units that I wanted to try and micro, just to kind of test myself. And if I was to do it over again, I could tell you I would take a lot of different units. Basically designed to deal with lots of the armor that they have, and units that don't play so much into all of the anti-large that they brought. So that's for sure. And then the Fireborn are getting in here, being microed very well the entire battle, I have to say. And they are going to be attacking my Slan Mage Priest. And I get a Revivification Crystal off on it, kind of preemptively, because I really expected them to surround my Slan Mage and just kind of hold it in place. But instead they're going to go after my my rallying skinks. And I'm going to pull my Slan Mage into the forest because, you know, in the forest, large units get debuffs. So if I have to fight there, it's better for me than for the Fireborn, for sure. And the Kroq'Gar is just kind of holding the line against these Phoenix Guard, smashing them with their hammers. Feral Bastiladon, it's all tuckered out. He's doing a little dance here with the Phoenix Guard. It's almost like Jurassic Park, like they're trying to corral him back into his cage. Poor guy. He still has 1400 HP. He could actually fight if he wanted to. The Ancient Stegodon rallied. So did some of these Saurus warriors. And he's going to plow right through. It doesn't matter what your charge defense is if you know, an Ancient Stegodon comes and charges at you. But unfortunately, these aren't just standard archers. These are Lothar Sea Guard. And they take a bit of a poison volley to the face. But there isn't much left that this Stegodon can do with only 800 HP. It's going to shatter, sadly. And before I can really even get my Ancient Stegodons into the battle in melee, That's it. The balance of power shifts too heavily. This Lore of Life mage manages to 1v1, not really, but kind of 1v1 my Skink Chief. And that's going to be it. So it was a fun one. Very fun game. So great play from our opponents here, the High Elf player. Getting that Dwellers Below really crippled my backline harassment with these Feral Cold ones. Just a solid catch. Doing about 25% damage to their HP was enough to rampage them, and then just a slip in micro from me made it so that I wasn't able to at least salvage one of them with Cold-Blooded. So my front line was a bit blobbed up, mostly thanks to the AI not really, spreading their units out or using any kind of flanking maneuvers. I mean, they threw their cavalry right up the pipe. Same thing with their Pterodon riders and stuff like that. So it was up to me to try and bring the strategic element, and I did my best. I brought the healing, I brought the flankers, and I brought some of our artillery. My Stegodon, 125 kills. And I can tell you for almost the entire battle he was shooting at Phoenix Guard. So that's a lot of value, and it's why I almost always bring that unit. And my Skink Chief, I think at some point I switched him over to the Iron Drakes. I believe so. But they're a bit more of a difficult target. I honestly thought it would do more damage than it did. I think I killed a few models, but not very many. Solid dwarf army. Good 2v2 tactics, I will say. One player being the complete front line, taking advantage of their race's natural ability to combat the greenskin. Longbeards are perfect. Thunderers, just enough other elements to help. Runesmiths being one of the most powerful, cost-effective hero units in the game. Giving those runes, powering up the armor, and straight up ward saves for units like Keepers of the Flame and Phoenix Guard. Just a great strategy all around. And the Fireborn with the big 331 kills. Just fighting great targets for the entire game. And then it's not very often you get to see Lothern Sea Guard shoot all of their ammunition and then continue to fight. So guys, thank you so much for watching. It was a fun battle. Thanks to my opponents, Haas 1977 and 123, for being good sports and playing a great game. Thank you to my ally here, Kroq'Gar, for showing up. He wasn't very good, but at least he didn't leave me hanging. And it was fun. So y'all, once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. And I will see you in the next one. Get hyped for the upcoming DLC. And you better believe I'm going to be playing lots of fun games with the new units once they show up. So that's it, guys. Have a good evening and take care.